Did Zordon manipulate the results of the lottery for the peace conference to rid himself of Jason, Trini, and Zach as Rangers? Hello, Rangers. This is Joe speaking. Here with me is my co-host, Dan.
Hello.
And today we'll be discussing this topic. And if you like other such geek-related videos and podcasts, do hit that subscribe button and share this video. Now, today in the Zordon Files, we're going to actually have an active discussion, as it's important to kind of have these back and forth discussions between us.
Mm-hmm.
We will be continuing to do blatant just lore videos, but we also like to discuss things between each other to explore our own thoughts a bit more fully.
Exactly.
Now, this won't be a terribly long video, but let's go. I'm going to base my argument in that Zordon did want to get rid of the three and had been planning to do so for some time in order to get three other Rangers, namely the Stone Canyon Trio, that he had had his eye on for quite some time before they even entered that one tournament. And we'll make a separate lore video on that later. But for now, we're just going to discuss this. The thing I would base it off of is the mental states of Trini, Zach, and Jason. Now, the thing with Jason was he was ultimately not the most successful Ranger. Now, before you hit that back button or that dislike button and start raging at us, just hear us out. His first great task was a success, redeeming Tommy and destroying the spell that was cast on him. But then his second great task was to retrieve the green energy, and he failed. And he nearly risked Tommy's life doing so. What's more is that Jason often liked to race off on his own and try to do everything himself. And he wasn't always successful at this.
He was capable of fighting against Rita Repulsa.
But not Goldar.
It's like he could foil Rita's plans and plots and whatnot.
But those were fairly easy to do.
When it came to Lord Zed,
no.
That was a whole new ball game.
But at the same time, I would argue, was he really foiling everything Rita had in mind? Because when it mattered, he didn't succeed. And the thing is, leadership was devolving more and more onto Zach at one point. It was Zach who ended up reminding Jason that Tommy's life was more important than his powers. It was Zach who was making a lot of judgment calls in the field and out of it for the team. It was, however, Kimberly and Billy who were the rising stars of the team, not Jason. It was Kimberly and Billy who in the series were the main characters, not Jason, because they have all the episodes, all to them, along with maybe, to an extent, Tommy. But Tommy's episodes were just an extension of Kimberly's. And the thing with Jason was he was formidable when he put his mind to it. But the trouble was he was not a very great team player. He was genial and kind to his teammates off the field, but on the field, he forgot about the overall bigger picture.
He often relegated his team to
support.
The support.
And he tried to do everything himself. Now, my argument is, had he been present for Ivan Ooze, he would have gotten himself killed. And he could not have succeeded as well as Rocky, to an extent. Rocky was a bigger team player, and Rocky was much more methodical and had a tendency to be more rational and cool-headed and think things through. Jason rushed in without thinking. And that helped for a time before Tommy was on the team and before Kim and Billy were trained up as much as they could be and before the Stone Canyon Trio were present. But the minute all these factors were in play, Jason wasn't needed anymore. And you have to bear in mind, Zordon can't make his decisions based on mere sentimentality. He has to do what is best for the entire planet and the entire universe. There's an entire universe to save, and, well, sometimes you have to make some tough calls. And Jason, as talented as he was actually giving in to his anger at times as well, a little too much. Because when it came time to choose between grabbing his morpher and replying to Goldar's taunt in order to claim the green candle, he chose to react rather than grab his morpher, morph, and grab the green candle. This split-second decision where he failed, I think, was the real test Zordon was waiting for him to do. Because, had he actually succeeded in morphing and defeating Goldar and grabbing the green candle, he would have been using his head and he would have had a guaranteed place in Zordon's final team. But the problem was he didn't make the right call. And throughout Season 1, that is frequently the case with Jason. He often makes the wrong call. And he chooses impulsive, angry actions over more well-thought-out ones. Now, initially, Rocky kind of does similar stuff, impulsive decisions based on dopamines, wanting to just play around all day. But after that whole pinball thing, Rocky ends up, yes, still having a bit of an addiction problem, but he does go out of his way to try and think things coolly, like in the movie, and where he's often the voice of reason at a few points, and he's often the one who backs up the others and covers for them. And the thing is, he is the leading, alongside Tommy, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu guy. He's one of the top martial artists they have on staff. So they need him to be the team player. And he is. Jason is just not a team player by nature.
When you look at the Seven Sins, every character often falls under one that has a major flaw. Jason has the sin of pride.
I'd argue wrath, but we're going to disagree here.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it was his pride so much as his anger that was the problem. But next we'll move on to Trini. Now, Three Thong, bless her heart, great gal, but we're going to criticize the character. Trini was not an enthusiastic ranger. She was not cut out to be a superhero because at her core as a character, Trini was a gentle heart, more akin to Alfred Pennyworth or Ma Kent. Now, if you want someone to raise your future Superman, I think Trini could do a better job than Ma and Pop, which is quite the accomplishment. Mm-hmm. Trini would be the perfect mother. She is the perfect mother. She mothered Billy into believing in himself. Billy was initially full of self-doubt and insecurities. She took that plump nerd and turned him into, a fighting, killing machine who is simply one of the greatest Blue Rangers of all times. Mm-hmm. She gave him the confidence to also be a ladies' man.
That was probably her primary role as a Power Ranger.
Mom.
And it's not to denigrate her.
Actually,
it's an important role.
Almost no Yellow Ranger's ever done it as well as her. Mm-hmm. Or Pink Ranger. But the thing with Trini was she was just not into the whole Ranger.
She was becoming more and more of a pacifist and associating Ranger duties, and sadly, even her friends, with violence.
Yeah, it seems to have been the case because she was starting to grow apart from them. Now, I know the actors did go on strike, and good for them. They stood up for their rights. They had every right to. Mm-hmm. I fully actually agree with them on doing that. Hell, Amy Jo Johnson and even David Yost have come out and admitted, had they known more about labor laws, they would have stuck with their friends and gone on strike too. But the thing is that the in-universe explanation for Trini not associating with some of her teammates, is that she was just not into the Ranger duties anymore. She was a gentle soul who liked karate more for the spiritual element and to find peace with herself, rather than harming others. Now, some like Aisha were adrenaline junkies. And as much as Aisha was a gentle spirit as well, she was an adrenaline junkie and obviously really into the Ranger duties. After she quit being a Ranger, she then began adventuring over in Africa as a solo Ranger and became one of Zordon's solo agents. Frankly, she said, I'm ready to quit, but she immediately dived back into her duties. She could never quit.
It was like a 2 weeks vacation.
Essentially. But Trini wanted to be a vet in universe. Now, my kind of headcanon for her is that the guy she met at the juice bar she was really into, she married him, maybe popped out 3-4 kids, became a successful vet. He became a good businessman, and she put the entirety of violence behind her and lived happily ever after. That's the ending I want for Trini.
Mm-hmm.
She deserves it more than anyone else. And I think Zordon manipulating the peace conference so that she could leave was a way of getting her out, but without really confronting her. Now, she would have felt bad about leaving because she really was into you keep your promises, and she promised. But Zordon manipulated it so that she would be able to be released from her promise without feeling bad about it. And she'd be helping world peace. And that would really appeal to Trini. Jason, it would appeal to as well, if for different reasons. Now, I think Zordon also wanted Jason to step into a pacifist field for a bit, if only to soothe his anger.
To bring him a bit more inner peace.
Now, Zach is my favorite of this trio.
Oh, yeah,
he's the best.
Everyone liked him.
He had a lot of screen presence. But the thing with Zach is, in-universe, one has to bear in mind, he was starting to be more into dating Angela and more into his, hip-hop foo or whatever it was, which was a great style. But he seemed really into his martial arts, but I don't think he seemed into the ranger duties eventually. Now, the thing with him was, while Jason was running off doing the solo ranger thing at times in a lot of episodes, it seemed to be Zach who ended up managing the team, acting as leader. And the problem for Zach was he was doing the work of several rangers. You got to bear in mind, the team wasn't up to snuff yet. Kim is barely trained. Billy isn't. Trini is pretty good, but she's really not into it. And Tommy, well, his powers suck and are basically out to lunch. So that leaves only Zach as a full ranger and who's fully trained. So what's Zach to do? Well, he has to pick up the slack of 5 people, maybe even 6. So Zach's busy doing the entire team's job. No offense, but he's gonna burn out. And you have to remember that the Rangers are between 14 and 15 when they're first chosen. So Zach, for a 14 or 15-year-old kid, is busy for about almost a year doing an entire team's worth of work. He's gonna burn out. He's gonna get tired.
That's a lot of responsibility for a teenager. I mean, yeah, some like Trini are very responsible teens, but you can't keep dumping more and more responsibility to the point where they
can't handle it. And Zach couldn't handle it eventually, I think. Zach would burn out and just ultimately stop really attending to a lot of his responsibilities once Kim and Billy were really well trained. Once they were up to snuff, Zach pretty much started to step back. And Zach was looking for an excuse to leave because he was tired in universe. He had worn out his warrior spirit, and he had a lot of it in him. But I think he will fall back on his martial arts in universe. He does become a sensei. He obviously probably marries Angela because he seemed really into her. And the thing with him is he basically rides off into the sunset like Trini.
But he wanted to become a typical teen eventually. It's like,
yeah, you see that in a few episodes where he bucks at having to morph and show up in the middle of dates.
Which makes it awkward to juggle the teenage life and your superhero career.
Especially when you're on a team, but you're carrying the team for a while.
There's too many commitments Zach was making.
So the thing is, Zach wanted an out. Peace conference would mature him and probably, yes, put some distance between him and Angela, which means they have to put the brakes on the relationship for a while, which might be for the best given teenagers. So Zach would have to leave, and I would argue it was for the best.
He needed self-reflection over who he wanted Zach to be.
But I think that the reason Trini and Zach were never recruited back into the Rangers was because Zordon ultimately felt that they had done their duty, they had served their purpose, and now there was no need for them to return. That they had contributed all that they could. Same with Jason. I think Zordon never had any intention of bringing Jason back. And that the intent was they ride off, they find their purpose, they become better, more balanced people, but he has his final team in the form of Adam, Aisha, Rocky, Tommy, Kimberly, and Billy. This is his team. This is his lineup.
Mm-hmm. And he'd probably find it cruel to bring back Trini or Zach.
One burnt out, the other lost interest. And that has to do with her having always been a pacifist and Zach having done too much work. So that's about my argument. And you pretty much agree with a good chunk of it.
Yes, and this is not to denigrate the characters or the actors.
This is just simply the characters' arcs, as they seem to be.
An analysis of the characters.
Yeah. Now, their arcs are interesting because they all kind of go down in a downward spiral to an extent as Rangers. Not entirely skill-wise, just emotionally they're getting less and less committed to it. Well, Jason's getting a little too committed in a way, but it's more his anger and his impulsiveness is a little out of control. So removing him for someone more level-headed was the right call. Zordon is also a commander here. He has to make military decisions in order to win the war against Zed, because Zed is the ultimate evil. And looming on the horizon is Ivan Ooze, the greatest evil the universe has ever known.
And he doesn't need alpha male hotshots going in Lone Ranger.
No, Lone Ranger will get himself killed. So he kind of had to dismiss the three. I do think that there is a logical argument to be made about why Zordon would manipulate the lottery, and that he did. Because it would not be Zed or Rita, as some might think. Those two really needed and wanted to keep those three Rangers on board because they were the weak links in the chain. Zed and Rita would want to keep those three. Trini's not interested in doing it anymore, which means she won't defend herself as much. Zach is burnt out, which means he won't be able to do as well as before. Jason is a hothead who can be lured into traps or into fumbling into any kind of scheme that they have. So these three are the best assets they have in the war against Zordon to an extent because of these weaknesses. Where Zordon, being aware of these weaknesses, where Zed and Rita would want to keep those three on his team, would want him to keep them, Zordon doesn't want that. He wants to clean up his team, do the best he could for these teenagers, these young souls, these teenagers with attitude, and bring on board new members that are fresh, that are not burnt out, and that are more enthusiastic about both the team and the superheroics. So if you like this video, do leave a like, comment, tell us what you think about our theory that Zordon is the one who really kind of manipulated the lottery, and why this was for the best for everyone involved. And don't forget to share the video and subscribe if you haven't already. We're trying to reach 1,000 subscribers so that we'll publish the first chapter of a dark fantasy horror novel. So, until next time,
it's morphing time!